Dr. Dean is actually a medical doctor and a naturopath. She's the author of over 50 books, including the bestseller, The Magnesium Miracle, along with IBS for Dummies, Hormone Balance, Death by Modern Medicine. I haven't read that one yet. I want to, and 110 Kindle books total. So in 2015, Dr. Carolyn Dean launched the RnA ReSet brand, which is based on nutrient protocols she built through 40 years of experience in private healthcare practice.
Are you looking for answers, searching for natural ways to support your body, or frustrated with mainstream solutions? So are we. Welcome to the Renewed Hope Wellness Podcast, where we're on a search for answers. We're going off the beaten path and diving into natural solutions to health and wellness issues. Our goal, empower you to be your own health advocate. So let's get started.
So your career has helped you build some amazing supplements too, which I actually do share with many of my clients as well, because they're just wonderful. Their absorption has been proven to be really, really good as well. So I would like to kind of start the discussion today about sugar. And I know you do new cookbook that came out called the Sugar-Free Kitchen, and I would love to get that's on my list too. I have to get busy ordering. I'm behind.
There it is.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so colorful too. So these are recipes where you've done like interchanges so that cutting like processed sugar out of the diet and it make it a little bit more tasty for people. Is that what you captured in that?
Yes, and Happy, my label designer, she's an artist, and she made this it's almost like an art book. The pictures are so beautiful of the recipes. So it makes it very inspiring when you see a beautiful meal on the table there. You want to do it yourself.
Beautiful.
And the type of cook I am, I'm always, well, I'll take a recipe and say, well, I don't have that, so I'm going to put this in. So there's all kinds of different choices. And I try to make recipes so that there are as few ingredients as possible. It drives me crazy when I see a recipe with like 15 ingredients. I mean, how are you going to have all those? So anyway, it's very common sense. And it's very important because right now we're in the middle of a sugar epidemic, let's say. And the way I put it in this trilogy, it's a trilogy, 3 books. It talks about sugar and how we got to taking 200 pounds of sugar a year instead of like 10 pounds 100 years ago, 200 pounds of sugar. And how the body only uses 1 to 2 teaspoons in the bloodstream at any one time. When you do a blood test, I did it, I worked out the math and just realized how little blood sugar stays in the bloodstream. It goes to the cells, it's busy doing its work. And when we take a dessert, a can of soda, whatever, 10 teaspoons of sugar in a can of soda. 5 grams is, 4.2 grams is the amount of 1 teaspoon. So what you have to do is look at a label and, oh my gosh, 30 grams. So you divide that by 5 and you get 6 teaspoons of sugar. And even just hearing that, people say, oh my gosh, 6 teaspoons of sugar, that seems like a lot. It is a lot. And I've known for a long while, and what I wrote about in one of the 3 books describing the problem of how we got to too much sugar was 55 years ago. There were research studies showing that sugar was causing heart disease. And the sugar lobby groups funded by the sugar industry said, oh, we can't let that out into the public. So they suppressed those articles and they started to blame cholesterol and fat. So we have now, this past 55 years, being told, well, butter is bad, animal fat is bad, lard is bad, tallow is bad. All these things that now we're hearing, no, it's the refined fats, the omega-6 seed oils that, I mean, there's a big attack on them now. Overemphasizing those for our frying and cooking and in all our recipes, that is what has caused so much inflammation in the body. Omega-6 oils and fats are pro-inflammatory. Omega-3 oils are anti-inflammatory. So we have, for 55 years, we've been misinformed about our diet. And what's happened is you look at labels now, ketchup, it's got more sugar in it than tomatoes. You look at your labels and you will see how they've tried to influence our taste buds to buy products. And it's ended up making foods in this ultra processed way where it's sugar and seed oils lacking anything natural or normal to the body. And the ultra processed food research, it's only come out in the past couple of years. A Dr. Hill did a study on ultra processed food. I think it was only 20 people. He locked them away in a hospital ward and fed them, I don't know for how many months. He fed one group ultra processed food and the other group a standard sad American diet. And he found that the ultra processed group ate 500 calories more and gained more weight just in those, perhaps it was 3 months. And everybody was shocked. Oh my gosh, what's going on? They couldn't figure out what it was. We know what it is. It's people keep eating to try to get the nutrients from their food. It's like our whole digestive system is scanning for vitamin A, B, C, D, K, all the vitamins, scanning for the minerals, and ultra processed food doesn't have those. So they just people eat more until they just get satiated. And sidebar, what have we got? An obese population who is now being misinformed about these drugs, the Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, that you can take a shot that costs you thousands of dollars a week and you will lose weight. Well, how that drug works, it interferes with the vagus nerve and with several hormones, and it makes you feel full and kind of feel nauseated when you try to eat. That's what it's doing. It's creating anorexia in people. And they come out the other end of it looking gaunt and, no muscle. They're actually losing muscle, perhaps as much or more than the fat. So this sugar deception all those decades ago has caused huge repercussions. If we kept eating animal fats and butters and natural, and even eggs, they were telling us you can't eat the yolk of eggs, it has cholesterol. Heaven forbid. Eggs they're like a complete food, complete protein with all kinds of nutrients, including choline, which is hard to get, which is very important for the brain. So that's my introductory statement.
Thank you. And I think we have, with the food pyramid being, as many of us knew, I think it was news to some, but that whole upside down reverse image that we've gotten did seem to be surprising in a lot of ways. I think just because that's not what people have been told, what they trusted and believed, but yet it really is how people were eating for millennia before that. Like, we're the ones that always feel like we can improve on whole food somehow, like the packaging of food that so it will last forever. And the convenience of our lives is costing us our health in so many ways. And yet it almost seems archaic to go back to one ingredient foods and know that our body can process the sugar or the glucose in fruit and certain things in moderation, that we are able to do that. But in a whole food, we're getting all of those, hopefully, the nutrients if they're in the soil, which is another conversation. But, to be able to say this food actually is prepackaged, it comes with everything that you need, unlike the food that, that we're sold in packaging, and how it is depleting us. And I think you touched on something, that we're overeating as a population, and yet we're so malnourished because we don't have the minerals or the micronutrients or even the level of mineral status that we think is on a label is relative to the health of the soil. And I know you're very plugged in, Carolyn, and living in one of the blue zones where you're very in touch with that, with your food and how things are grown, and that it takes more to have healthy food and nutrients than just even buying something organic a lot of times, because it really depends on what they're doing to that soil in order to feed the plants that we then need the nourishment from.
Right,
So
right. Yes, here in Maui, we have year-round harvesting and food availability. But when I moved here 18 years ago, I was shocked to find out that we import 90% of our food, and we still do. When we
wow.
had the slowdowns and shutdowns during the COVID years, we didn't get our, I think, twice weekly barges, and Costco was emptied out. So, but what I did a few years into being here, because I'd been involved with the CSA movement on mainland, the community supported agriculture, where we paid a membership in an organic farm. And during harvest season, we got a box of organic food from a farmer that we knew. So all my resources, I have the dietary supplement company, but I put those resources into lending the farmer extremely low interest loans, because organic farmers, we just had big storms here, and it probably cost about $60,000 worth of damage on a farm that's just kind of scraping by. But we're farming about 60 acres, and it's all organic, biodynamic. And we're trying our best to give people the basics. But like you said, the soil can get farmed out of the minerals, and it's really hard to replace. Sea salt is one of the things that I tell people to put in their drinking water because it has 72 minerals. How can you find soil fertilizers or whatever that have 72 minerals? Anyway, I think that the ship has sailed for us to be able to get all our nourishment from the land. What used to happen back in the day before we started a lot of residential development on at the end of waterways, like where rivers open to the ocean, that's prime land for building homes. But what it was to farmers was their perfect farmland, where water from the mountains would, during the winter, the ice would, form all over the rocks. But then when the ice melted, that would all scrape over the rocks and allow minerals to start dissolving in the water. There are these long-lived communities, and most of them live by mountain streams, where the water, they say, can be even cloudy with all the minerals. Now, they're not totally dissolved, obviously, because it's cloudy, but they are getting high doses of minerals, which are our building blocks. And when I formed my company, that was our first formula, was a picometer size stabilized ion of magnesium. Because when you look at a compound of a mineral, it's too big to get into a cell. And what the body will allow in the bloodstream, in the liquid of the blood, a mineral will dissociate into its two ionic parts. In our case, it's magnesium and chloride. And in normal circumstances, that magnesium being very hyperactive, it will bind up immediately to the chloride or something else. And so it's not available for very long to be absorbed. Now it's happening constantly, so there is absorption, and any type of mineral, no matter how poorly absorbed, is going to have some effect because our body needs so much magnesium. But what I found, I mean, you were mentioning how I've been studying and researching, doing all these things. I think what really got me going was when I was living in New York. 20 years ago now, doing AIDS and chronic fatigue research. I was asked by Random House to write my first book on magnesium, the Miracle of Magnesium, or the Magnesium Miracle. They renamed it. And they asked me to write a book at a time when I was having heart palpitations, headaches, neck tension, Charlie horse leg cramps, all the magnesium deficiency symptoms. And I just thought they were stress. So it was writing this book, looking at the research, just being totally amazed of the importance of magnesium. Now we're finding out that about 800 enzymes require magnesium. It's not 300, it's 800. And 80% of known metabolic functions require magnesium. So from head to toe, we have magnesium deficiency symptoms that medicine never looks at. We never learned about magnesium in medical school. So it's come to the point where the massive stresses, the Wi-Fi creates this situation where calcium will slide into the cells and stay there and excite the cells to death. This is Wi-Fi, how it works. Whereas if you're saturated with enough magnesium, the magnesium shuts down the mineral ion channel that lets calcium ride into this, what they call a gated calcium channel. So magnesium, we have people on our Remag for a few months, and they'll call in customer service and say, yeah, it's amazing. I can't believe how much better I feel. And then 3, 4 months later, they'll call up and say, hey, it's not working anymore. I've got a coated tongue. I got gas and bloating. I'm itchy. It's not working. And we say, oh, no, no, no. It's just your immune system has woken up and it's treating your yeast overgrowth because it's helping the immune system. So when we have been misled about all these magnesium deficiency symptoms as being their own diseases, then we're just at the behest or whatever of medicine to say, well, you should take drugs for all these conditions. And this is my updated magnesium book. I'm sure you have it, Magnesium,
Yeah.
the Missing Link to Total Health. Because what happened when I wrote my second or third edition of the Magnesium Miracle, it was 600 pages. And who's going to read 600 pages anymore? So in this book, I list over 65 medical conditions that are really in large percent of cases magnesium deficiency. And they're alphabetized for the most part, asthma, ADHD, autism, all kind from A to, I don't know if I have a Z, maybe Zeta potential. So anyway, it's a miracle to be able to take enough magnesium. And the point of making the stabilized ion is that most magnesium compounds cause the laxative effect, which it caused me. I had all these symptoms. Oh my gosh, I got to get magnesium. I went out and got a higher dose of magnesium than was in my multiple, and I was in the toilet all day. So people
Yeah.
are, I don't know what percentage you would know from your clients and patients. There's a high percentage of people who cannot take the amount they need to get rid of all their symptoms. I mean, my heart palpitations, when I finally had my own magnesium to try out the Remag, I was able to take 1,200 milligrams for over a year to saturate myself. I couldn't take 100 milligrams without the laxative effect. So I started imagining how many people in the world are suffering because they're not getting enough magnesium. So then we get people turning to, well, this herb or this synthetic, byproduct of vitamin B3, like NAD now, is a hot a hot supplement on the market. And people don't realize, well, actually magnesium helps the production of NAD and everything to do with it. And if you had your magnesium as a grounding, you wouldn't need to reach out to all these sometimes expensive formulas.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point because people often, get excited when of course, marketing is amazing and you get really excited that, oh, this is a supplement. What do you think about this? Which I do get asked about all day long. And I always say, let's go. Those are good. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that, as you said, if you could start with the foundation of how your body would produce that on its own, because it is possible, just like GLP-1. I mean, we have GLP-1 receptors not only hepatically, but in the entire body. And that's my concern, is everything being weighed out to say, you can't affect one thing in the body in a vacuum. We just don't work that way. But if you're able to build, your own insulin sensitivity by magnesium and the basis of minerals foundationally, the body's very intelligent. I just believe that it knows what to do. It's just often we don't have the tools for it to build a house, but we're asking it to with very limited resources. So you don't get a beautiful house, you get kind of a mess. But I do think that there are some concerns that if we don't go back to foundations, and I really agree, Dr. Dean, I don't think all the time people say, I want everything from my food. And I say to them, me too. So we would have to go back to Eden because that world doesn't exist, in my opinion, anymore. We have kind of sabotaged our environment to the point that we're having to look for other resources for nutrients. And if we don't, then we're going to find ourselves still malnourished in the midst of maybe even good quality food. And I've grown organically for years, and even managed a farmer's market in our community or helped with that. And it's very, very difficult to produce organic food. No one could appreciate how
Yeah.
much love, labor, and time goes into that. And then what you're allowed to, or what you could actually sell that for. I used to sell lettuce for like $3 a head, and I would tell, they would come in, and some people would say, "Oh, $3, that's kind of steep." And I just want to grab it back and say, "You have no idea what it took to get that." Now, this was several years ago. I would probably go up to 5 at least, but it is a labor of love, and it is not easy because without our soil being, replete with minerals, you have pests, you have plants with disease, you have funguses. And so, we want to fix things from the top, but we really have to fix it not only in our growing environment, but I think in our physical environment. We have Technology needs us to start from the beginning. And I think sometimes we do have so many great herbals and supplements and things like that, except sometimes we just need to get back to the foundation of the basics and start from there. So with,
Well,
with sugar, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Dean.
yeah, I don't want to forget you mentioned Eden along the way. So let me tie in um, the Garden of Eden, vitamin C, and sugar. Um, when Eve was tempted with the apple and she took it, what I say about that is we don't have our own vitamin C production factory. Humans
Mhm.
don't make their own vitamin C. Of a million species of animals on the planet, and apes, humans, and bats don't make vitamin C. So my terrible blasphemic almost story is that when Eve took that apple, then God said, okay, you think you can get your own vitamin C? Go ahead. And took away one of the three enzymes that make vitamin C. Now, how many people realize that? We don't make our own vitamin C. So when you look at the RDA of vitamin C at 90 milligrams, 90 milligrams, and then you look at our older patients with the bruises up and down their arms, bleeding gums, that is scurvy. We have an epidemic of scurvy. And I got to this through doing the sugar research because what is going on with sugar getting into the cells, we know insulin is a transporter of sugar to get into the cells. But guess what else is transported on insulin? It's vitamin C. So when you have your tin of soda with the 10 what is it, 10 grams of vitamin C, 10 teaspoons of vitamin C, sorry, 10 teaspoons of sugar, then you
Wow.
are overloading the insulin with that sugar, not allowing vitamin C on the transporter. So you're trying to stuff the sugar into the cell, and vitamin C is kept out. But what you need inside a cell when you're doing the metabolic function of even making ATP energy in the Krebs cycle, the glucose goes through something called the glycolysis cycle. Six of eight of those steps require magnesium. Krebs cycle, many of the steps in the Krebs cycle require magnesium, but they produce waste products, and vitamin C is supposed to be in the cells to act as an antioxidant against those waste products. So I mean, there's so many layers to excess sugar, but I think the main one in terms of our immune system and inflammation is the fact that vitamin C can't get into the cells. Isn't that incredible?
It's amazing. And do you think that's why that like the with the consumption of I think I had looked like it's a few tea I think it's 100 grams of sugar, which is I think equivalent of two small sodas, that it
Yeah.
actually dismantles your neutrophils for like by like
Yeah.
50% for several hours.
Yeah.
So when I try to talk to someone about like the impact of processed sugar, it may seem well, it's just a soda or it's just this. But when you're dealing with chronic illness or you're dealing with trying to prevent type 2 diabetes, it's like you have literally disarmed yourself against any kind of viruses or pathogens or bacteria for
Yeah.
50% reduction of that, which means if you consume a diet of sugar daily, you just have more than you need, or you have, which is really what they have 6 teaspoons, I think, by the World Health Organization. I don't
Yeah.
even know where there is that in a day. Um,
Crazy.
but then even that, it's like you're looking at you're really like multiplying how long your immune system is not functioning fully,
I
which is
know.
why processed sugar leads to chronic illness because again, the
Well,
body knows what to do. But that's
yeah.
amazing. I did not know about the insulin carrying the vitamin C. That was amazing.
Yeah. And yes, to the point about the immune system, we all know kids after a big sugar birthday party, they'll get sick. And then about the sugar and heart disease, because we don't think of it in that way, but this is where Linus Pauling comes in and his work with vitamin C. They thought, He was just talking about the colds and flus. He was talking about heart disease, and they completely avoided all that research and suppressed it and didn't fund big studies. Oh, that's only 50 people. Oh, we can't live. What he was saying is because we don't make our own vitamin C, then we don't have the vitamin C that will heal up arteries. Arteries are made with collagen. Vitamin C makes collagen. If you have weak collagen, you get little tears, and those tears are bandaged up with cholesterol. So cholesterol is coming in to, save the day, and we think it's the bad guy. And not only that, you've got that cholesterol as a band-aid on that little tear. And if you are magnesium deficient, you will have relatively more calcium in your blood, and the calcium will precipitate onto that band-aid, and there's your atherosclerosis. And what he worked with, and there's anecdotal studies, there's animal studies, there's small patient population studies showing that up up to 10 grams of vitamin C can reverse heart disease. But he used it along with lysine, and later, I think he and Matthias Rath, Rath, who was a doctor from Germany, I think, who worked with him, they added proline. And it turns out that proline is what can kind of antidote the lipoprotein A that's become the next boogeyman about heart disease, because they're proving now that actually LDL isn't the problem, it's LP little a. And they avoided talking about LP little a until just recently, because they've now got 4 drugs in the pipeline to treat LP little a, because it turns out statins do not take care of LP little a, they make it worse. And there's a whole discussion about that. You'd love the book called Practicing Medicine Without a License. It's by
Okay.
Owen Fornow, Foronow. And he was just so distraught at what happened to Linus Pauling's research, that he wrote this wonderful book, and it gives a lot of insight into what's going on. And I don't know if it was him or just more research, I found out that LP little a is trying to do to these tears what vitamin C does. Because vitamin C, like I said, produces collagen, but also if a tear does happen, the vitamin C ascorbic acid will help that wound by producing a blood clot. And there's something about what LP little a does that's equivalent to vitamin C. So in animals who have the ability to make their own vitamin C, they do not have elevated LP little a. It's in animals who don't make their vitamin C, they get this elevated LP little a. So why aren't we looking at this vitamin C, lysine and proline business? I got so frustrated. One of my I don't have many products. I just have products that work. And my new product is going to be high dose ascorbic acid, vitamin C with lysine and proline on the side. It's crucial now, because when we went through the COVID years, we found out that spike protein in whatever form was damaging the heart. So we've got a real epidemic of heart disease. And when you look at statins, and people, oh, you have to take statins. Have we reduced the incidence of heart disease with statins? No. What statins do is they'll smash down the LDL somewhat, but it doesn't extend your life. So
Not
what's the point?
correct, Dr. Dean. Is that the latest that I keep looking for, this study that's going to come out that's going to prove that statins are all that everyone acts like they are, that they're going to extend your life, but there isn't one study that I've found yet that they can extend your life by 1 day, but yet everyone's on that statin. And, I think so many times that's medicine, unfortunately, or human nature to say, well, we don't, we want to shoot the fireman. We don't want to find out where the fire's at. Like cholesterol coming in to save the day. It says, oh, no, no, cholesterol's bad. And it's like, is anyone stopping to say, why does your body have systemic inflammation so that you're getting a response system to save you? And instead of attacking literally what would protect us if we had all these other things. That's interesting. I'm very familiar with Linus Pauling's work and cancer research as far as using high dose vitamin C in cancer therapy, but not with lysine and proline. So that is amazing to me because, one of the issues with the high dosing is calcification. So would that, because of like kidney stones or having issues like when you're trying to do high doses of vitamin C, again, when we isolate something without its cofactors and how nearsighted that is. But would that be why, Dr. Dean, that you might be more prone to like kidney stones if you were doing high doses of vitamin C, but it were lacking those amino acids from lysine and proline or
No,
magnesium?
no, when I came during the COVID years, I started to work with vitamin C powder, partly to help the strong mineral taste of my liquid minerals, but also I knew that vitamin C was important for colds and flus. So on my podcast, I invited six vitamin C experts, medical doctors who used high dose vitamin C. And I asked them point blank, does it cause kidney stones? Does it do any of these side effects that they talk about? And it does not. The whole oxalate business, it does not. So this is one of the other topics that I cover in my vitamin C books. No, my sugar books. My sugar books. I get confused. I'm afraid I'm on this writing what is it? The wheel that the animals use. I'm on a treadmill. So vitamin C, I guess because Big Pharma knows it'll interrupt their business, they have taken every measure to try to put it down. But we just don't see these side effects from high dose vitamin C. And if you think about it, animals our size are making 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. And when they're under stress, they will produce more. So I began to question all the rat and mice studies where they, put a stress on a rat or mice and then say what drug helps these rodents. And if they're under stress and they're producing vitamin C, isn't that going to be what's helping the rodent and not the drug? So to me, it just sort of threw out 100 years of rodent research because they're not taking into account the vitamin C effect. Isn't that interesting?
It's amazing and how and just something so simple and how we are literally with sugar, we're dismantling that whole process to even be able to get it in when we maybe do have it coming in from some foods, but we have this competition with insulin carrying all this glucose and having to distribute that everywhere, which is I think the obesity epidemic is something that among children is just heartbreaking. And it's just the empty food intake, the vitamin C, like the nutrients and the micronutrients, it's just non-existent in this public school system as far as the foods that we're feeding our children, like everything from cradle to grave now is sugar. It's sugar based in so many ways. And I think the more you have, one thing we're guaranteed with sugar is the more you have, the more you want it. Because again, I think your body's looking for those valuable nutrients. And it's like, well, maybe this will work. Maybe this will work. And and we've hijacked system until the body can revert back, but it's going to take people realizing that it is truly poison. I don't know if you remember the book, I'm sure you've read it, The Sugar Blues, kind of an older book, but just kind of highlighting a lot of these things that, one of the things I do with is work autoimmune or cancer. And so we got to get the sugar, you've got to get out the competing agents in your diet. That's all you could afford to do. Sugar out of the diet is probably
Yes,
one of the most
yeah,
anti-inflammatory things.
right. It doesn't cost anything to stop sugar. When I was in practice
Yeah.
parents would come in with their kid and said, they're just addicted to sugar. I can't stop it. So I'd say, well, let's do an experiment. No sugar from whatever, Sunday to Saturday. And no, Sunday to Friday. And on Saturday, you can eat all the sugar and junk food you want and see how your body likes it. And Sunday, they would spend in bed, they would get sick. And these kids would actually, it would dawn on them, oh my gosh. And another thing I'd say to kids is, well, would you feed your, dog or cat ice cream? Or I list a bunch of things, and they say, oh my gosh, no. And I said, well, why would you feed yourself? And adults can do the experiment too. If you go off sugar for a few days, you may crave it, and then that's an education. It's, oh my gosh, I am addicted. And after a week, you feel better. You don't have inflammation. I mean, this whole trick of just being able to bend your fingers like that, a lot of people can't do that because their fingers are swollen with retained fluid to try to dilute the sugar and the toxins. And because you don't have minerals in your cells, you can get fluid retention in your ankles. So with avoiding sugar and then giving yourself a big meal of it, you do the experiment to show yourself what your body's putting up, the headache or the indigestion. And then you make your decision, well, is it worth it for me to have, or you understand you can have a small bit of sugar. And what I did over the years, I suffered from yeast overgrowth. Golly, I would eat a pint of ice cream every night while I was doing my homework, and it was drowned in a can of peaches or pears with sugar syrup. I was a mess, mercury fillings, colds and flus all the time, cold sores. It was just incredible how my immune system was under attack. And then the birth control pill and more mercury fillings. So when I learned about the yeast overgrowth from William Crook, actually happy, in 1986, William Crook came up to Ontario and he was on a TV show, and I was on that TV show about yeast overgrowth. And it was a 90-minute show. It was in the middle of winter. There was a storm. So everybody was at home watching TV Ontario for this show. And we had 60,000 telephone calls into the station. People wanted to ask questions. I was just
Oh my.
amazed. So I'd been working with yeast overgrowth, but what I was doing for myself is avoiding sugar, wheat, and dairy. Back then it was just wheat. Now we say avoid sugar, gluten, and dairy because the gluten protein can be irritating. So I did that for 10 years. I did not eat sugar. I did not eat bread. I did not eat dairy. Didn't budge. I still had coated tongue, sore throats, yeah, all the rest of it. And finally, just a couple of years ago, I decided I have to make a yeast treatment because I was rotating herbs, oregano, but high dose oregano can kill off good and bad bacteria, just like antibiotics. So
Right.
finally, I'm working with Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a yeast family itself, but it's an antifungal. and it's so safe. They treat childhood diarrhea with it. So I'm using Saccharomyces boulardii, humic fulvic, which has pro and prebiotics and minerals and all the rest, and inulin. And that, along with my Pico Silver, which is silver in a picometer size stabilized ion, those two have been just remarkable for helping people keep their yeast under control to the point where we don't have to be strict like monks and the body takes care of itself. And every once in a while, I'll get into a binge mood, like just recently it was bananas, coconut cream, avocado, and cacao. Spin it up and it's chocolate pudding. But then I would
Oh,
put a cup of frozen cherries in it. And it's just amazing how unconscious we can be about our diet because a month into this, I said, where's all this mucus coming from? I'd have postnasal drip and I'd have a little cough, everyone. And and it wasn't until I ran out of bananas to make another load that I realized, oh my gosh, it was this chronically eating I guess the cup of cherries and the banana sweetener because I thought, oh, you're doing great. You're not putting sugar in it. So we have to assess what we're addicted to and avoid it and see if we feel any different. We got to get used to our own body and what it's trying to tell us.
yeah, and how we rebel against that and think, oh, probably not that. It's not that. That's not what's bothering me. But I do think that, we have to get to a place to where you notice those things and you are more self-aware that maybe this isn't normal for me. I've accepted these like chronic mucus or sinus issues or something like that. But definitely, having to I guess our pain points of what we put up with. And then it's like, wait a minute, take an assessment, on
Yeah.
that for sure. So in your other two books, Dr. Dean, do you kind of go through with about sugar? Are you talking also about the depletion of not only magnesium but all of the minerals and even B vitamins? I mean, multivitamins being challenged in that as well. Like why sugar is so harmful? Is that kind of what someone would expect in those books? Is just a breakdown of all the different effects that it has on the immune system and the body as a whole.
Yes, just every way it's affecting us. One of the things that I realized that I had, I started the sugar book actually back in the 1980s up in Canada, and actually I was on national TV during a Christmas show, the Deanie Petty show. And I was talking about sugar. And I've said I'm writing a book on sugar, etc. And I spooned out the 10 teaspoons of sugar in a can of soda and 25, 30 teaspoons in a milkshake. And it was an audience of school children. And they were, oh my God. And the sugar lobby group in Canada came after me. Just, yeah, they just were, yeah, they were. So it's back in the 80s, and that's when they were realizing that sugar is bad for the heart, and they had to suppress that. So I was saying bad things about sugar, and it got to the point where my licensing body admonished me for talking about sugar on TV, and that I was promoting a book and I was doing this and doing that. They were siding with this sugar lobby group. And that didn't really go far. They just admonished me in the letter to all the doctors in the province. And then they sent in a plant to um,
Wow.
try to get information on me. The plant was a young man who said that I refused to give him a homeopathic remedy for his asthma, which I did. Now, if I had given him a homeopathic remedy for his asthma without doing testing and whatever, he would have complained that I gave him a remedy without testing. So they were after me. So this is the state of alternative medicine, where you cannot say anything bad about either sugar. I don't know about medications. I do put down medications, and I suppose they have me on their radar. But this is why patients are not getting the information that they need, because doctors won't be open about it. If a doctor now is in HMO, a clinic group, and word gets out that they're talking about alternatives, the boss of the clinic who's hired this doctor owns them. They will just tell them you can't do that anymore. It's become very suppressed. And this is why shows like yours are so important. And inviting me on to be able to say these words is so important, because people are not getting this information. And even the commercialization of dietary supplements now has gotten so out of hand, where they won't look at the building blocks. I'm just talking about the magnesium, a multiple mineral that I have that has 12 minerals, 9 of which help make thyroid hormone. Talking about the pico silver, and then omega-3 made from algae instead of killing all our fish. So I stick with algae. And then I put in a vitamin A and a vitamin E in with the algae. And I work with vitamin D3 and K2. And vitamin D doesn't work without magnesium. So that's the circle of building blocks. And of course, vitamin C. So what's happened in the supplement world, there are a couple 100,000 different um, formulas and products out there, with the thousands and thousands of supplement companies that seem to just jump up overnight. And what Dr. Mark Hyman and a group of his friends has done, they created a company called SUPCO, SUPPCO. And the website is supp.co. And I'm sure they're using AI, because you couldn't do it otherwise. They take all the supplements that are presented to them. We presented our supplements to them, and they analyze them in 29 different categories. Like if they're third party tested, if you get your raw ingredients from America, or if they're foreign imported. 29 factors. And the trust score, it's called, is 0 to 10. And my company, overall, all our products together averaged is at 9.25 out of 10. Our Remag magnesium is 9.75. So they say we're in the top 2% of trusted dietary supplements. You look at some of these supplements that they spend millions on their marketing, which they should put into their product, and their trust scores are 5, 6, and 7. And they said, well, that's average. So you and all your patients, anybody listening, can look up your list of dietary supplements, look them up on supp.co, and see their trust score. And that, I think it's going to do a lot to help people understand what they're getting in a dietary supplement, because we have people coming to us who say, well, I've tried this and that and everything else, and nothing shifted me until I tried yours. And that's what I felt. I mean, I had a cupboard with hundreds of bottles in it of supplements that I've used over the years. And it wasn't until I had my own Remag magnesium that I got rid. I'm turning 77 next week, and I feel better now than I did in my 30s, because in my 30s, I was still all tightened up with magnesium deficiency.
Wow. You do look amazing. I know I've said that in every interview we've had because I'm like, it just, to me, it just is a testimony to mineral status and vitamins, nutrients, and that the body is capable of so much more than we allow it to do because of what we're feeding it all of the time too.
Yeah.
I think the supplement information is so valuable for people to check that because we know that some of the more trusted brands even there's so much money being made in the supplement world that now the supplement companies are being bought out by these large food groups and industries. I was really disappointed to see the list of companies that have sold out, to Nestle and to companies where now we're seeing this branding and we're like, oh, I know that company and we list it and we trust that. And yet that may no longer be the actual supplements that you're getting because there's so much value in having a vertical line to the people that are making your supplements all the way down through the line. 90% of the supplements ingredients, even if it's made in the US, and you know this, I'm sure, Dr. Dean, are sourced from China. 90% of the things we're trusting in order to improve our health are coming from a country that we have no idea how it's actually being, the standards that things are being grown. And also, really, just something close to my heart is regeneratively farming these things and honestly, like getting supplements in the native environment as far as our herbs. If you don't know where these things are coming from, then it's very likely that there is a whole, that they're destroying the ecoculture around those and that you're starting to, people need to realize that supplements are not all created equal. And I'm very particular about the supplement companies and I'm always changing it for even some that I think, okay, this checks the boxes I'm hoping for, and then find out they've recently been in a buyout to a China company often. That was the big issue during COVID. Everyone thought it was because people were sick and they couldn't get all, there was a real supplement. There was we weren't able to get a lot of supplements and people were like, oh, it's because of the staffing. And no, it was because 90% of those ingredients were coming from China. And I think we need to understand if you're doing something and spending the money to benefit your health, you need to know 100% and this is not a plug just for your products, believe in them because I have seen my patients benefit from them. I myself have. And then also see the challenges that even taking magnesium, like the ReMag, how much our environment and our stress in our life depletes magnesium so that it becomes really difficult to reach that 6.1 to 6.5 on my labs as far as that goes. So I think, just weighing it all out, but we have to be more responsible with where we're getting our supplements, just like we do with our food, because if we don't have some kind of a different criteria to run things through, we're going to see depleted resources beyond what we can repair. And that's not to be, discouraging, but I think as humans, we have to reflect and say, okay, I'm buying this product. What did that cost? Not in my finances, but all the way down the line.
When I was in New York in the early 90s doing AIDS and chronic fatigue research, we were using Chinese herbs. I was making them into homeopathic formulas, sterilizing them, and injecting them into people for AIDS. It was amazing. And when my mentor died, and I went to the company to try to find out if they would bring in Chinese herbs for me, I said, what happens if you bring them in and they're contaminated or, they have bugs in them or whatever? Oh, that's okay. We'll flush them with this gas and we'll do this to them and that to them and they'll pass inspection. And I was shocked because this is a big company and that's what they do. They do not. I said, well, don't you have to put that on the label, all this nitrous oxide and different things that you're going to be processing? No, no, it's only that. And they thought they were helping me out. I was like a spy. And they said, no, we just have to pass the inspection that says there's no bacterial growth or mold or whatever. So we can just, I mean, what are they doing to these herbs? And if they're coming from a foreign country, we don't know if they're just sweeping things off the floor. And there's no guarantee that they're organic if, as you say, if they're not grown in front of your eyes.
I think it's getting more difficult to know what's real. Well, do you have any closing thoughts on anything as far as what we've talked about? We always seem to be able to cover quite a bit, even though we have one topic, which I love about talking with you. But your books are all available on Amazon, I'm assuming, and also your website. Are they on there as well?
Um, I think the recipe book was on the website for a while. It should be on
Okay.
Amazon as well coming up, but we had a sale on it on I either RnAReSet.com, that's my store site, and separate educational site is drcarolyndean.com, and that's where I have my blogs and my podcast and webinars. We'll post our interview on my website. But I had to separate the two, Happy, because back again, well, COVID really changed everything. The FDA said that I wasn't even allowed to have testimonials on my website where I was selling products because it made it look like I was making health claims. So I couldn't claim that miracles were happening because that's the testimonials I'd be getting from people. And maybe one last thing. I don't think I've said this before. Um, I forget what book I was writing, but it was about the brain. And I found out that brain neurons, each of our 86 billion brain neurons, has 2 million mitochondria. 2 million. The heart, each heart cell has 5,000 mitochondria, muscle cells, all the rest, maybe 1 or 2,000. The heart has 5,000. I forget what I said. But the 2 million it made me crazy thinking about how we've been told all our medical careers that the brain uses up more energy than the rest of the body. We know that it uses up 20% of our calories, all this and that. So what's happening is each brain neuron in the mitochondria is a Krebs cycle, and who knows how many Krebs cycles are cycling around in each mitochondria. And each of them, as I said earlier, requires a lot of magnesium. The end product of the Krebs cycle is ATP, adenosine triphosphate energy, but it really is Mg-ATP, magnesium ATP. You cannot have that energy molecule without magnesium hanging onto it. So all this business about dementia and Alzheimer's and whatever else, even Parkinson's, can be related to the lack of magnesium. And magnesium is also going to bump out heavy metals. And they talk about Alzheimer's and is it aluminum? Is it aluminum from jabs? Is it arsenic and cadmium and all the rest of it? But if you don't have mineral saturation, not just magnesium, but mineral saturation, then the mineral receptor sites on cells and tissues and whatever, they will accept heavy metals and jam up the receptor sites with heavy metals, and there you have your heavy metal toxicity. But even so, those cells go through a life cycle, they'll die, and the new cell, if it's exposed to enough minerals, then the minerals will be using those receptor sites and not leave any room for heavy metals. Isn't that cool?
Wow, that's amazing. So, I think too, as far as like when you think about heavy metals and supplements and, things like that that you're checking for, but yet having that balancing side that if you have mineral repletion, you're actually able to really combat against that. And we're seeing when we do a lot of testing and things, we're seeing heavy metal testing really high and people not understanding where they're getting that from. Well, if you have the magnesium deficiencies, and that's something I think among the elderly is very overlooked, that their mineral status and why they're, just accepted that they're going to have dementia or they're going to have, memory problems when they're not even checking the basic things. I'm always surprised at the red blood cell, the RBC magnesium testing and how difficult it is to get that even through. I have this one lab that we go through LabCorp and the people there are wonderful, but when that test gets to LabCorp, the times that they get that wrong, it's like, okay, so we're doing serum magnesium every time, and so I've gotten now to where even though I'm not really reflective on that one as much, I'm doing both, just because it's really hard to get that status. But I have, very few times, and this is through almost 2,000 patients now. Very few times am I seeing anyone have a good, like a really healthy 6.1 magnesium status. It's very uncommon. And I think there's just so many things that are competing for it, but just, and I sound like a broken record in many, many consultations as I say, oh, that's magnesium. And even with like MTHFR and how all of the trending things with gene mutations and everyone's like, oh, it's a folate problem, take methylfolate. And I'm like, it's a magnesium problem because, magnesium and folate have to have one another. And that's why I think a lot of people aren't able to get that status up as it's challenged on other levels too. But, folate being magnesium dependent, I mean, that's huge,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And this makes me think, I didn't mention magnesium is really compatible with potassium. So what we find, if the potassium doesn't seem to be doing what, no, if the magnesium doesn't seem to be doing what we think it should, we say, oh yes, you need potassium. And back in the day, I just used to tell people, well, drink potassium broth, cut up all these vegetables and boil them a bit and then drink that water. But you never knew how much you were getting. And then what happened with all the keto and even the carnivore diets, people stopped eating their vegetables and they're not getting their potassium. So they're
Yeah.
become potassium deficient. And then the FDA, a number of years ago, there was some potassium drug that they put in a time release capsule. And what happened, it released the potassium, maybe it was a potassium chloride in the small intestine area and started burning the small intestine. So all potassium is bad, it's dangerous. We won't, the FDA said, we won't allow a supplement to have more than 99 milligrams per dose. And when you look at a mineral, I think it's 4,700 milligrams is the RDA, 4,700 milligrams. And they weren't allowing people to take more than 99. So that's
and,
where
and
I mm, I danced
that's
around that and I made my potassium a quarter teaspoon is a dose, so that a teaspoon, which is the normal dosage of my minerals, a teaspoon is 400 milligrams, which because it's fully absorbed, it sort of is 2 and 3 times the absorption. So usually a teaspoon or two is enough potassium for people, but we've run into that more because of the diets people are on.
Yeah, and I think the latest statistics said 90% of Americans are truly potassium deficient. And, my mom recently had a really hard, really scary heart issue. And I'm not going to go into that, but I was amazed at just taking her to the ER and how many things saying, there's all this push of course, this all these meds, and they got to get all the meds through IV. I was like, could we check her magnesium level? Could we please check her magnesium level? As we're going in, and she was very, even in the serum, she was very deficient. But that was the last thing that I mean, I don't know if it would have been done had I not asked. But I was insistent that I wanted to know that, and then check her potassium level, which was very, very low. And I said, well, let's do that. Can we do potassium and magnesium pushes instead of all these drugs, which did not go the way that I'd hoped. But I saw in that it's their side things. And it's like, how can two of the most important minerals in our body be something that you look at last when someone's presenting with even heart attack symptoms? But I
Well,
can't be the only one that knows that, Dr.
in the electrolyte panel, they don't even have magnesium. They
No.
don't have magnesium. So they're, blinders down when it comes to that. So I don't know how they're treating people properly for heart disease because they don't look at magnesium. It's shocking.
And it's shocking even to me in the cardiology panel, and maybe it was just the terrible hospital we were at because we were forced into a situation. But having said that, I actually talked to multiple cardiologists and said, could you check heart? Can you tell me what her RBC magnesium is? Because they were like, oh, she's 1.9 in the serum now. We've gotten it up. And I was like, could you check that? Dr. Dean, I don't even know. I can't even tell you what the interchange was like, because even one of the cardiologists looked at me and he said, are you medical? And I said, that's my mom. And I understand the importance of RBC magnesium. Could you please check that number? And he said, well, we don't really look at that number. It doesn't cardiac panel. And I was like, where's Dr. Dean? That's what I was thinking. But
It's very,
it was sad because she was very, very low, and I knew she had been because she'd been so sick. And so thankfully she's doing better. But I think being in that situation made me realize that it's medicine, medicine, medicine that's being pushed. And with just totally overlooking the physiology, like the biochemistry of how we work. Like, would we not want to start there before we started with the drugs? Like, we don't have a deficiency of a multitude of medications, guaranteed. Can they be helpful? A bridge? Yes, absolutely. But wouldn't we want to see why we need them first? I think I walk away from that thinking, I don't understand I don't understand the point of it all if it's not to cure people and we're only treating people, you
no,
know.
I mean, when I was in med school, I went in knowing about nutrition and thinking that I just want people to listen to me and know that I know both sides. And I sincerely thought this was back in the mid 70s. This is a while ago. And I truly thought that within a couple of decades, all doctors would be naturopaths and medical so that we could treat the whole body. And it's just gone completely off the rails into big pharma and these HMOs controlling medicine. So it's just become a business. And it's almost like as long as they keep visiting the doctor and we can bill them and give them drugs, then we're fine. They are not interested in wellness.
No, and even the way the insurance is set up, for me, wanting to run preventative labs, it's that is not what it's about. And you see that clearly when it's like, well, we don't run that without a diagnostic code. So they want the disease to be present before you can check the levels of the things in the body that would really alert us that, oh, you can fix that. You can actually correct that so that you don't become X, Y, or Z. And I think the frustration of that, I've had several shared patients who want to use their insurance. And I get that. I have insurance too, but I pay for my own labs out of pocket because it's to me, it's just not the scope of what I'm looking at. But they want to use what they're paying for, and I understand that. But, I say, okay, well, here's your lab list. Go see if your doctor's willing to talk to you about these and get these possibly ran. And often they come back and frustrating experience. But, I've even had doctors come back and say, well, I don't know why she wants that lab. And I'm like, why don't you? That's my question. Is because to me it's about preventing disease. I'm not there to look at the treatment models. It's how can we prevent you from needing to get to the medications that are going to deplete your mineral status, and how often medications are prescribed and no one ever says to the patient, very rarely, do you know if we put you on the statin, not only are you going to need CoQ10 because we're cutting that off at the pump, but you also are going to deplete folate and magnesium and many other minerals in the process of absorbing this drug. And no, we wait until the damage is done. And then it's like, oh, well, now you need another medicine because guess what? You can't live without magnesium and folate. It's like,
Guess what? Oh man.
I get a little frustrated at the whole thing because I think the last time I checked, we are still 50th in the world for curative treatments in the US, and we're #1 in cost.
But
So
not with your patients and not with my customers. We are providing people the answers. And although we've gotten into this doom cycle, we're just trying to remind people of what, the
right.
alternative, but the answers are right in front of you with us.
That they're accessible. And I think too, looking at just trying to put together like the basics of like what do we actually need minerally wise. And I do think that your products are, to me, the way that they are sized down in the particles so that people can absorb them. And I often say to people, they'll say with the Remag, well, that dose is low, that milligram dose. And I'm like, well, if you're absorbing all of it, then that's very different than what we're getting, maybe 20-30% out of these higher dosages, but they don't really do very much, But the potassium link, I think, is huge in helping people understand that's a lot of mineral content to come out of your food, especially when a banana only has 8%. If you're trying to watch your sugar intake, it starts to get like where you're needing to look at like avocados and like a lot of other foods that are going to be much higher in potassium. But I often have clients say, let's just keep up how much potassium you get in a normal day. And when they come back, it's, maybe 500 to 1,000. It's very, very low. And then you have women with pounding heartbeats, irregular heartbeats, all this. And it's like, it's probably just, let's check potassium and magnesium, which, is hard in the metabolic panel because so tightly regulated for sodium and potassium. We're only getting a representation. So kind of looking at that, if you're in the low range of normal, then you still really need to think you need those things. And I think the 99 milligrams of potassium, that is still what they gave my mom after they wanted to put her on a diuretic. And I was like, so she gets 99 milligrams of, if I left it to them, it's like she gets 99 milligrams of potassium twice a day. And that's gonna, yeah.
Wow.
So it's a good thing I don't listen very well sometimes. But thank you for making products, Dr. Dean, that you have spent a culmination of your life understanding how we work and what we actually need and producing something that's very high quality, taking the work out of this on this side for us to say, which company do we trust? I think it's a hard thing but if, talking with you and knowing that you're in touch with your product from beginning to end and that it matters to you, it's not just a business. I think that's tremendous, and for me, it gives a level of trust that, hey, this is where I want to spend. And I do. My family we use many of yours. We have tried to cull out so many in the last year that I'm just getting down to like, okay, what are the basics of this? And I do think you've covered them really. So maybe I need to simplify my life and just shift over there altogether. But well, thank you I wanted one last question, Dr. Dean, on the yeast overgrowth. If someone's taking ReMag and they get the bloating that you talked about initially, like it's terrible. You know, they're having some issues. I've had a couple times, which we're usually dealing with candida overgrowth. Would your advice on that be to continue to, just because I know there's so many things happening in that, and I always reduce the amount and say let's go back to a tiny amount, but that's pretty common in the body cleaning something up? Or do you feel like there's something else going on initially if that happens?
Well, you've had the patients who I call them too toxic to detox,
Mhm.
so that they get scared, they may take something like Remag, which is going to be wonderful for them, and they feel it, and then they get scared about it. So what we tell people is to either take the liquid and start putting it on their skin,
Okay.
or get our Remag lotion or our Remag balm, which has Remag in a way that you can put it on as a body lotion, or the balm is stronger. So we use it for injuries or, tense areas. So give it externally. And this
Okay.
is how we give it to babies, and they'll feel better. And then as they get better, they'll realize, okay, let me take it by mouth. But some people, they just tense up when they take something new. And I'm not saying it's psychological. It's like they're so in touch with how their body shifts and changes, but you don't know whether it's a good shift or a bad shift.
Yeah.
So at that point, any shift is suspect. So you just go external.
Yeah, and I do that with the lotion a lot. And I do feel like we still get levels up. It's just the consistency that they need to have in that. And what if someone were to present, what would your advice be? Like, very rarely, but a few times, someone will be taking magnesium and they feel like it makes them jittery, or it makes them like their legs actually feel kind of that little bit of restless leg, which is where we switch to topicals and it usually solves it. But is that what you feel like too? You would just say maybe that same thing, you're just a lot more aware of how your body's changing with the supplement, or?
Well, magnesium is going to help through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So it's necessary for making adrenaline. And maybe their body needs some more adrenaline, and the priority of the body goes to making more adrenaline, but they're still in sort of an irritated, hyperactive state. So the adrenaline just sort of surges out and makes them feel jittery. So it's just going slower, going external, and just explaining that, oh, your adrenal glands are waking up and they're just a little hyperactive. It's okay.
And that has been my explanation. But I think too, one of my simplified versions is that when your body needs something as much as it needs magnesium, and you actually give access to that, I think the body does have a moment where it's like, let's use it everywhere all at once. Let's put it. And I think sometimes we are, if we're, pretty self-aware, it's like, okay, that's not, I didn't know I needed it everywhere like that. So I do like the topicals. I didn't know you had a balm. I'll have to go on there and check out the website, and then a couple books that you've given us as well. So I hope there's another conversation, Dr. Dean. If you don't get tired of me, we'll revisit this again.
And next time I'll have to remind you in the beginning to call me Carolyn.
Well, I think, I was reading when I was looking at your biography that I did not realize I just have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And I just like you as a human, as a friend told me the other day. So um, I don't mind at all to do it either way. But I saw that you were truly the first functional medicine doctor in Canada. That was kind of like something that I saw, and I was like, wow, I feel like we could just like do this, but that's amazing. Like really the frontier of what we're seeing trending now, you were doing years ago, and I think you have a lot to offer everyone in that for sure.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Appreciate it. And I appreciate what you're doing. You're helping so many people, both one-on-one and with your podcast. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. And thank you for the products that are helping my people, because it's been wonderful to see. I could literally fill up pages of that on just reviews of everything that they have good experiences with. And it's been literally life-changing for magnesium to be in some of their lives like this, and the other forms weren't working. So I think that's it says a lot right there. So, well, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, I have my podcast later on today. So thank you.
Well, maybe I'll have time to actually listen.
Well, you're too busy. So aloha and mahalo from Maui.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast inspired you or encouraged you in some way, please leave us a review or share this episode with a friend. If you need help connecting the dots of your own health journey, I would love to help you with that. You can reach me via the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation. You can also connect with us by joining our free Facebook community, which is linked below, or at healthywithhappyspurling.com. Until next time.